Hi there, welcome to Kindness TV. This episode is all about cultivating internal kindness. I really believe that kindness can heal. I believe that kindness can help you recover from extraordinary events. I believe that kindness can help you heal from breakdown. That's what this episode is all about. This episode is for all of you, including me, who isn't 100% kind to themselves. I've been a psychotherapist for just over 20 years, and I've found that the biggest thing in the way of people recovering from extraordinary times is their own internal brutality of thought. We all have it. We're not born with it, but we develop it over years and years. It becomes so familiar to us that we forget we're even doing it. When we're traumatized by something, it becomes very clear and very loud, the internal voice of brutality. We can be very cruel to ourselves. Now, in 2011, something happened to me that traumatized me, and I ended up with post-traumatic stress. I was assaulted, and it took me some months to overcome the disarray that my neurological system was in. But once that started to get better, what I was left with was really brutal thoughts. I had felt humiliated, and I'd felt guilty that I had put myself and my children particularly in a situation that wasn't good for us. And of course I didn't know that at the time, otherwise I wouldn't have been there. But it transpired that a nice thing in my life turned out to be tremendously traumatic, and for my children too. And instead of being kind to myself at the worst point in my life, what I did was torment myself, like almost torture myself with unpleasant thoughts on a regular basis. And one day I had to just realise that I was never going to recover, and I certainly wasn't going to heal from these terrible times if I continued to do that. So I remember just deciding I'm going to do the exact opposite to brutality of thought, and my word for that is kindness. Other people might call it compassion. So I decided from that day forward, every time I was unpleasant to myself and nasty and swearing at myself and not feeding myself well, or not exercising, or whatever it was, I decided to do the exact opposite. And it started with the smallest thing, just to have a kind thought and saying, what a shame you went through that, rather than damn you for being so stupid and being really, really brutal. So this episode is really about that, and I'm sharing that with you because wherever you are with your own brutality of thought, I've been there and I've come through it. And life now is so much more pleasant, so much easier, so much more full of joy, and clearly so much more full of kindness and forgiveness too. So I started to think about what's happened to us. Why are people so unkind to themselves? What are we doing? You know, most of us have professions and jobs and families. What is it that's made the human race be so unkind to themselves? And what do we get out of that? Because we're not born that way. We've mixed up being kind to ourselves and caring about ourselves and what we've been through with self-pity and arrogance. If I had £1 for every client that ever has said to me that looking after themselves and being kind to themselves means they're going to turn into arrogant arses, I'd be very rich. But of course I've felt that too. We have adopted this and taken it on board as though it's real. But because we all do it, we think it's normal, and nobody's really born that way. I've supported other people to learn about cultivating internal kindness instead of brutality of thought, and that has led to changes within themselves, within their families, within their workplaces. It really does have a power. So, my belief around kindness being readopted, if you like, is we have to gently challenge. So not be mean and challenge ourselves brutally, because that would defeat the object. We need to gently challenge what we have assimilated as normal. Now, because we are all unkind, we have believed, I think, that inner brutality is desired. Like we give ourselves, particularly in this country, in the UK, we give ourselves like a pat on the back, like, oh, you know, we're very self-deprecating, we're derogatory ourselves, we call ourselves fat and greedy and lazy, and, you know, we kind of desire to be mean, but actually that only serves us to join the pack of everybody else doing it. And most of the time we can bob along in life as though that's okay. And most of the time it probably doesn't harm us greatly. When something devastating and shocking happens to us, however, we need to harness all of our resources to recover and get better. So just as we need to eat well, sleep well, and truly look after ourselves, we have to be kind to ourselves to smooth the path to recovery. If we don't cultivate internal kindness or make the decision to try and start that process, sadly, we kind of force ourselves into this kind of cul-de-sac of dis-ease and discontent and at worst keep You know, I get the privilege to work very intimately with people, so you know, people share with me this inner turmoil that they're keeping mostly private and secret, and a lot of that is because of how they truly feel about themselves, but how they also talking to themselves and how they're treating themselves day to day. So to not cultivate internal kindness is just accepting the lesser evil, if you like. I understand that it doesn't make sense that kindness is hard to cultivate, but you've got thousands of years stacked against you. It's hard, but then be kind to yourself about how hard it's going to be. And then the kindness helps you along the journey of starting. I'm very aware that kindness to self takes courage in this climate. If we are treated positively or given a pat on the back for being mean to ourselves and not looking after ourselves, skipping lunch, you know, we get positives for skipping lunch, we get positives for being derogatory towards ourselves. It's then going to take us courage to do the exact opposite. You know, we're going to be accused of being inflated, having inflated egos, for instance, or you know, people being, oh, look at them, look at what they're doing, you know, they're all full of themselves. Brilliant, that's what we want. Cultivating kindness is all about being full of yourself, being full of all of what you are as a person, all of the energy that's available to you. We have to get to a point where we decide to not be in the mass of dis-ease and discontent and turmoil, because we know that it doesn't have to be that way. Making a start in cultivating internal kindness, like many things, it's going to start with a decision. The decision doesn't have to be a huge, like, oh my gosh, I've got this blinding moment. It comes with a very gentle acknowledgement of the initial brutality. And I'm urging you, if you fancy to have a go at this, is to realise that, oh yeah, I am brutal towards myself, and it doesn't have to be that way. So, for instance, if you're, oh, I'm fat, or I'm ugly, when you say to yourself, how interesting that I feel like I need to do that to myself, it's a very different energy that you have for yourself, and kindness just gently grows. So I've talked to you about how kindness can accelerate your healing and your recovery from very traumatic times in your life and adverse times in your life. Now I'd like to share with you a couple of things that will help you today to just start you on that journey. So the first thing you can do is to just ponder the idea that things could be different. You could live with internal thoughts of kindness towards yourself and then truly accelerate your recovery and healing from whatever you've been through, and then genuinely offer kindness to others without it using you up. The second thing, once you've pondered that and perhaps seen the possibility, is to make a clear decision. It's only with yourself, so you're not going to let anybody down. Just make the decision with yourself to be kinder to yourself and work towards 100% kindness, which isn't easy, but just make the decision that you're going to start that journey. The third thing that's really helpful is to find the smallest, easiest way of being kind to yourself, something that's not going to be a massive challenge, but perhaps you know, if you're using mean words in your mind or swear words perhaps towards yourself, that in the very moment that you've used them, right after you've said it in your mind, that you find an alternative. Or you say, oh, how interesting that I feel the need to do that. So here's an example. I've occasionally, and I don't get this very much, but occasionally I'll think that person hasn't done that job well enough. And really that's only to do with me, about not being fully kind to myself and accepting of my own weaknesses. So what I do with that now is I say, oh, how interesting, Anna, that you feel the need to do that. I don't get very many of those thoughts, but they're only a reflection of how I truly feel inside myself. So they tend to be easy because we're, like it or not, we tend to be, oh, that person's a bit, oh, aren't they? And we can just do something differently with it. I know it sounds a bit funny, but they're the easy ones. So choose something easy first and then just be kind to yourself. Just say, okay, I realised I needed to do that because I felt insecure or something like that. And that's the 1, 2, 3 of starting to cultivate internal kindness. So if you've enjoyed this episode about cultivating internal kindness, why not share it with a friend or a family member if you feel like it would be helpful for them? The other thing I'd invite you to do is make a comment below this video and share with us your experiences of kindness, internal kindness, and perhaps even how kindness has changed your life. Join us next time on Kindness TV. Thanks for watching.